I'm gonna,
Jamie Machado is here. Tachi, TPFYI. Bernadette Condon. No,
it looks like my husband called, is what I call
Ryan Lynch is on. I've advised him that I can't hear him remotely. He had to be present, but I just noticed that he is here.
it.
And Barry Rice. You'll see the name.
Okay. Do they know they're off the agenda?
I've advised him of that, but I see that he's on the call.
Hmm.
Guess they
Do we
go
want to
back
straighten
on.
that out before we start?
So he's not waiting. I told him I would put him first if he showed up, but we can't hear him remotely. We required the applicants to be present like the rest of us.
And which one is that? Mr. Lynch and
Lynch and
Mention Tom.
Moran.
Yes.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes,
The
they're
two
off.
brothers off.
Attorney Hunt, you agree with that, Attorney Hunt, that they should be present?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see.
And may I ask which application you are with? Are you with Ramos?
Yes.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Ramos, what are your first names? So I can put-
And Evelyn.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, everybody's in and we're being recorded. Okay. You're ready.
I'd like to call the October 20th meeting of the Board of Architects. Applications will not be appearing. Meeting. Agenda will be application at 29 Lookout Stable Road. The applicant has been before us before. Mr. Pern is proposing to construct a new two-story single-family dwelling with an attached three-car garage, indoor pool, and rooftop deck on a presently undeveloped acre parcel of property, possibly 4-acre property, right? On 29 Lookout Stable Road. Just as background, the village board has approved the cutout for the driveway on Lookout Stable Road and the septic system. The Orange County Planning Department has expressed no concerns and approved the application. The planning board approved and issued a decision on October 13th. And in accordance with the site plan powers delegated to it by the village code, determined that the final site plan complements the character of the community, and then approval of the final site plan is in the interest of the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The planning board has designated the limits of disturbance as noted on the final site plan as the maximum appropriate buildable envelope for any proposed structures. The planning board finds that this maximum appropriate buildable envelope took the following into consideration: conformance with the applicable zoning regulations of the village, parking, means of access, screening, location and dimensions of buildings, adjacent land uses, and physical features meant to protect adjacent land uses, stream removal, extreme slopes, utilities, orientation of the structure on the lot, tailoring to the natural terrain, overdevelopment of the site, given the physical and other environmental features of the site, proximity to roads, adjacent structures and neighboring properties, visibility of the structure, and appropriateness with the village's National Historic Register of Historic Places designation. Specific conditions which affect this bar are 3, which is what will be our focus this evening. Their condition number 3, this approval is specifically conditioned upon the subsequent approval by the Village Board of Architectural Review as to the design and architecture of the proposed residence, landscaping, specific siting of the residence, and other structures within the maximum appropriate buildable envelope as shown on the plans identified and approved by the resolution of the planning board, and any other matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Village Board of Architectural Review. Their number 4, any lighting fixtures or intensities of lighting that may be noted, including or referenced in the otherwise approved plans, not approved by the planning board by this resolution, by their resolution. And they had to be secured from the village, from us. And finally, number 11, any trees in the area of the proposed septic field that can be safely removed shall be replanted on the site. Those were their conditions, and our focus will be largely on those aesthetic and landscaping, lighting type issues this evening. And I would ask the public who wishes to speak to limit their discussion to those when we get to that point. So now we're going to continue to review our guidelines. The public has been notified in the course of their review, has sent in a number of letters which will be included in the record. We appreciate your letters. They have been given due consideration. We don't discuss them outside the meeting, so you may not hear a lot, but believe me, we have read them in great detail. Persons present who have provided letters may feel free to read their letters into the record themselves, but it is not the village board's and board's procedure to read them for them into the record. Please keep in mind our parameter of review. The public will be invited to speak later on in the discussion once the applicant and the members of the bar have had a chance to discuss the status of the application. I'd like the persons present at the meeting to know that this bar has taken a site visit since the property has been staked in order to appreciate all of the comments that we have received and the applicant's proposal as an introduction to this evening. And at this point, I would like to invite Mr. Perna and his consultants to take control of the screen, show us what they have, what their latest plans are, what has changed since the last time they have been before us, and then we can entertain comments from the bar.
I have control of the screen since Mr. Perna is here.
Okay,
Mr. Perna just wants to possibly advise on, I'm gonna see if I can get to the, do we want to talk about the architecture? Do we want to talk about the site? You just tell me what page you want to go to. Sorry.
Yeah, just want to intervene, Mr. Perna, I'm always
Jamie, I think.
here if you need me as well. I'm sorry.
So
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't really believe very much changed since the last time we met, because when we adjourned, the last thing we needed to do was to go back to the planning board and get planning board approval and then come back to you.
mhm,
In the interim, we did have surveyors come to the property and they put their stakes in. And after they had completed that, then, as I said, that was the plan. I went up subsequently with the building inspector and with my own contractor, and we looked at the route of the driveway as it appeared on the survey. And that's what's in front of you now, which is not on the screen. Primarily, and I'll describe what, based on what you can see, instead of the the driveway being more adjacent to the property line, it's moved now about 20 feet into my lot, away from the property line, on what appeared to be an old wood road that had already been cut, perhaps maybe in the other century, maybe 2 centuries back. We don't really know, but it's definitely was a built structure that was existing on the property. By using that wood road as opposed to the road that you see on the map, and just envision it, if you looked like at the left border of the driveway as it's proposed there, that's where the new driveway will be approximately, maybe even a few more feet in. And so, again, it looks like a very long driveway, and because of the fact you have to have a driveway that can achieve a 10% slope in order to be able to make the grade, that's why the driveway is as long as it was proposed here. However, if we use the existing road, we still will be able to make the 10% slope. And the good part about it is, as is indicated here, we save 8 trees in the process. And the driveway becomes a little bit shorter, a little bit tighter on that curve. That curve is not as leisurely as it's appearing here. It's a little bit more acute, but compared to some of the roads that we have in the village, I think it's really not even a hairpin. It's more relaxed than a hairpin, and as it's proposed here.
So your goal there was to save those large 8 oak trees?
Yeah, we had those beautiful trees there, and really because the old wood road didn't have any trees on it. It just has those invasive species, those devil's walking sticks and other things on there, which all have to be removed. All of that has to go, along with ailanthus and other things, Southeast Asian species that are in the cul-de-sac area there. That's all of that's got to
A
go.
lot of wisteria over here.
Yeah. So the goal here is when we're coming into the property, all of those invasive species will be gone, and we'll be left with the beautiful oaks, and there are some maples in there. And there are a couple of trees that do have to come down, but the trees that are coming down, for the most part, using this route, are the trees that you'd want to take down anyway, because they're not healthy trees. There are some trees on the property that have already fallen over. There are logs lying on the property here and there. All of that obviously will have to be cleared up before we move in. But that's primarily the only real change that we had since the last time we met. And I think it's a good move. We even take advantage of this rock that you see in the picture here in this drawing, because that's where the road will be going, and that'll become part of the embankment. So it helps actually to have that big rock there. So it helps to hold the embankment together. That'll be there. And that's it. As far as putting the road in, it will require a cut and a fill, which most roads do. And the cut and the fill are basically equal to each other. So we're not anticipating having any excess material left around. So we'll be able to move the material that's there and just put it into the fill areas. In the beginning, as it first comes in from the cul-de-sac, there's a bit of a fill area there. And then as you go up, then you start getting into the cut area, but we'll be taking some of that out and putting it back into that curved area so we can bank it. So when you're coming down the hill, particularly in the winter, if you have a nice bank on your road, you're not going to wind up sliding into one of those oak trees or the big rock.
One of the questions from the people writing in letters was about the nature of the driveway. Could you clarify what it is? Is it cement? Is it gravel?
Yeah, we're going to use gravel. And I want to replicate the same colored gravel as the outcrops that we have. And so it's debatable whether, if we wind up with a lot of excess rock, which I don't think we will, we probably wind up putting it into the embankments. But if we do wind up with some rock, maybe we'll actually send that out to be crushed and just bring it back. I'm not certain until we actually get through the excavation. I'm not going to know whether we've gotten a substantial amount of rock where even it pays to go and send it out. But if we're going to put in the gravel color of the gravel will be basically the same. And I'm hoping to be able to buy it locally. So it'll be from the same local formation gravel, the granite that we have in the area. And we'll put that into the driveway.
And we're hoping that we'll get to see a sample of that when the
Yeah.
time comes so that we can,
Yeah, we'll provide you with a sample of that.
as the project proceeds.
Yeah, and so that's primarily it.
And the idea is that the house too will kind of, the gray that you use, you reference the light gray, that
Right.
will match the gray
Right.
granite
Exactly.
outcroppings, right?
Right. As best we can.
Right.
There was another and maybe misconception with some of the letters that came in, thinking it was a white house.
Some of the images read as white,
Yeah.
and that's why I asked the
Yeah.
question.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
No, it's going to be more of a grayish.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, we would also expect to see a sample of your treatment on the outside of the house
Right.
that you're calling light gray.
Right.
It's Venetian plaster, but you have another name for it.
Well, it's in the trade, it's Venetian plaster like.
Like,
Okay.
well, for an
It's a
outdoors.
Because as Mr. Letworth pointed out to me 2 months ago, yeah, in Mediterranean areas in the world, you can build with that material and it won't deteriorate like it would here. But what we have here is a material that looks like Venetian plaster. They actually call it Venetian plaster in the literature from the installer is telling me this, but it has a resin base. It has all the same ingredients that Venetian plaster has, but it has resin built into it.
So that makes it inert, I guess, for
And it
temperature.
won't break down
fluctuation.
and it'll be more waterproof.
Right.
And so it won't.
Enhances adhesion.
Yeah, so it holds up better in the weather. And also when it's all done, then they coat it with a resin coating.
Mm.
So that holds it and it's guaranteed for 5 years. So you have to do it every 5 years though.
Really?
You've got to put that coating on the building or you lose the guarantee.
Mm.
So they will continue to guarantee it as long as for another 5 years, as long as every 5 years they come back and do it again. But, having had a stucco house, the house that I have right now, there's always repairs in stucco that have to be done anyway. And so, again, it's a beautiful thing, but it does take some maintenance. So you really have to keep on top of it. So,
Calcera marmorino, as they call it.
yeah.
And you will be
That's a little,
providing us a
that's a
sample.
little bit pink in the
Mm.
picture.
It's hard to tell. That's
Yeah,
why we
and
want to see
so
it.
when we get to that point, when they're actually, like you were saying, you'd like to see a sample.
Mhm.
Usually when they do this, they give you a fairly big sample area. I think
Mhm.
the manufacturer says it's got to be like 4 feet by 4 feet. And you put it on there before you put it on the wall. So you make sure that the client understands what the effect is going to be before you wind up putting it over the whole building. And then you got to start all over again. So we're really going to have to look at it in the lighting that's there too. That's why they make that panel to see what it's actually going to look like. And so
But again,
that's the
to come
process.
back,
Yeah.
your materials
Mhm.
and your representations are that the material will be of the gray family. It will not be
Exactly.
white.
No,
It's funny,
And
this image here, if I can,
Yes,
if I can
it
borrow it,
does.
Sheila, in fact, does look gray.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like some of the images that we've seen, especially up on the screen, have looked whiter, which I think
Yeah.
may have triggered some of the questions. My neighbors.
Mhm, mhm.
like
But
it's
this one looks
appearing
good.
right here, it looks, that's about what we're going to
Yeah.
try to achieve.
Right.
And again, it's an art form, being able to get that effect. And so I've got, believe it or not, I have some work being done tomorrow by the same company that's going to be applying this finish here on this house. And I'm anxious to see what kind of quality work he does, and I'll be discussing this with him tomorrow morning when he gets there at 9 o'clock.
While we're discussing materials, maybe we should discuss the sides of the house and your vision, because there had been some discussion that these were just blank walls, but
Yeah.
you are installing wooden panels.
Yeah, there'll be wooden panels, and you can see it in that rendering.
Great elevation, yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so there'll be panels put across there, so we break up that monolithic look then by putting those wood panels in.
which will be cedar, natural cedar, you say.
Most likely. Again, cedar holds up really well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And again, we will want to see the samples of this
Yeah.
in the context
Yeah,
of
well,
of
you'll be
this
getting them.
at when the time.
We'll be
yeah.
getting them to you.
And that's that's the side facing the neighbors. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, so we'll want to
So
see
can
it
you
in place.
Show us,
Yeah.
Mr. Pruitt, that we're looking at would be this here, right? Yeah. And
Right.
so the neighbors would be right over here and here, is that right?
Yeah, down here.
Yeah.
They're not on.
Quite a ways.
Yeah, quite a ways back. There's another house like back here.
And there's some woodland here.
Yeah, this is all woods in here too.
Mhm.
Okay.
We had discussed during our site visit that you were going to put in some additional screening over the
The septic
septic field right here.
And I was hoping to get some feedback from Christopher Gow.
Mhm.
It's not my area of expertise, but I would like to have conifers mixed in. Because we don't seem to have that many natural conifers, but I would not want to put something in there and then 2 years from now, it dies on me. Or the deer come and they, like the arborvitae that everybody had, got decimated over the last, for whatever reason. I had it for 15 years, no one ate it. Except 3 years ago, I was wiped out. And they were beautiful arborvitaes and they're all wiped out. And so I had to pull them out, and I put wildflower mix where the arborvitae was. So I just banned the idea of putting trees in that particular part of my property. But I would like to find out what you would recommend.
It's very easy. The native species. So, for example, white pine.
White pine.
That's evergreen.
Okay.
American holly.
Okay. I love American holly too.
And it's beautiful as we put it
Oh,
slowly,
great.
but it would be happy there. Other deciduous trees such as beech and oak are native, and they keep their leaves longer. So often during the winter, especially the younger beeches, you still have all this wonderful golden brown leaves intact, which is great because it's very important, obviously, for the environment, but also for a screening. It's very clear the elephant in the room is, from all the letters that have come in, of the modern nature of the house is making people uncomfortable. And we can get to that style issue in a minute. So once we finish with the trees. So obviously the importance of trees and screening is crucial to respect the neighbors so that they don't necessarily have to see your house. So those trees, and then understory trees as well, the smaller ones that like this partial shade, that are not necessarily evergreen, but would fill it out nicely, would be spice bush, which is wonderful because that is the harbinger of spring. It's not as let me say gaudy as forsythia, but it has these beautiful yellow flowers. And then witch hazel as well has some beautiful flowers as well, and that has beautiful leaves and arching branches, and is a great understory tree. So the combination of all those together would be beautifully natural, appropriate. It wouldn't stick out like a suburban screened sort of a screening of vegetation. Planted naturalistically within there would go a long way in acting as a natural screen for those that are not into contemporary architecture, that, you know, their sensibilities won't be so rattled. So they'd be the main ones, and I'd be happy to put that in an email.
Well, I would suggest, and if you all agree, the plan, the renderings already provide that you're going to put a certain number of, was it 6 or 8 trees in the septic field at various elevations. Perhaps you could impose on Christopher's expertise when you're ready, when you get to that stage, to come back to us with a septic field plan, landscape plan that helps bring that to life, if you're okay with that.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I mean, nearer the time when that stage is ready,
Right.
in order to do that, because it's you know, it's a win-win for everybody.
Mhm.
You'll enjoy it, the neighbors will be happier, and the environment will be happier. You know, the birds and the bees and the pollinators and the providing, that's the beauty of the native species.
However, it is still designated in the renderings, and I mean, in the drawings, so that we know that it's planned for. And
There are seven locations.
7 locations currently.
4 approximately below the septic field and 3 approximately above.
And I'm taking that's a minimum, but
Yeah.
you're committing to.
But again, I think it has also to do with how they, like American holly can get pretty wide. And that's the effect that I would like to get. I'd like to get some width there. The neighbors would probably like to see things that are higher. And American holly takes fairly long time to get really tall.
What if you stagger white pine?
Yeah, but
and
maybe
American
we'll,
holly and some
right, maybe
cedars?
we put a combination of the 2 in there,
Yeah.
might really look
You
tiny.
know, the other thing, Mr. Pern, is you have so many beautiful oak seedlings, white, red,
Mhm.
and chestnut oak,
Right.
and just to protect those, because they're happiest where they're going, where they've already planted themselves.
Exactly.
And, you know, with a little patience, that too will help buffer the house from the neighbors and be good for wildlife.
I mean, I'm hoping that any of the ones that we do have to, if there are young trees that we can ball and move from one location to the other, those would become part of the blind or whatever, we're trying to achieve that. So really want to, we try to use everything that's on the lot now to its fullest, without removing things and disturbing things that don't have to be done, don't have to be disturbed. I'd like to be able to restore those trees that maybe will be replanted, to be replanted strategically.
Well,
And
it
or
is a
just-
condition of the planning board that any trees in the area of the proposed septic field be safely, that can be safely removed, shall be replanted on the site.
And, you know, and also just editing out. I mean, we find on our property far more oaks than we'll ever be able to grow to maturity. So if you sort of pick the ones that have seeded themselves or been seeded by blue jays and squirrels in the right place, leave those ones and edit out the others. And because they're happiest, the taproot is very sensitive when you try to, even a
That's the
small
problem. And
oak one.
Christopher will tell you, when you try to transplant a tree, I remember when I was a kid,
Yeah,
I would always try to go and find a tree, and I lived on Long Island,
yeah.
and then plant it and then come back the next weekend and it was
Different
gone.
Plants are, my experience, American beech transplants well, and various firs like balsam fir transplants well. White pine less well, but okay. And oaks are very temperamental.
Yeah, I really don't have much experience with the oaks either.
But I just want to say for the record, a big thank you for saving these 8 oak trees. I mean, some of them are, 24-inch.
They're majestic trees.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Gorgeous trees.
They are, we're facing a problem, worldwide with the reduction in the number of trees. We're facing that here in the Tuxedo Park as well. There we're getting our inventory of trees. It's like the air in a tire. It's decreasing, and we need to keep that filled up. We need to replace any tree that's taken down. That's so important to keep our inventory. It's like our taxpayers. We don't want our number of taxpayers decreasing, and the burden falls on the smaller amount. We need to keep it replenished. So this is great that you've been able to save these oak, and specifically oak trees
Mm.
are outsized in their contribution to the food and habitat and the well-being of our robust, healthy environment. So that's great. Are there any other questions about the landscaping before we sort of approach the elephant in the room?
Just to be, we have neighbors who would like to be heard.
Yes, and we will, but we're just, I think we wanted to get through the discussion of the materials
Mhm.
first. And I just wanted to point out in the guidelines, and I know that we'll have a lot of discussions that in some instances here, we are not using, Mr. Perna, we are discussing using non-natural materials, which the guidelines in some cases discourage, but do not prohibit. But I would point out some of the language in the guidelines, which provides, even in the introduction, that the purpose of the guidelines is to encourage respect for our historic design heritage over time, while simultaneously allowing flexibility for positive innovation and a variety of architectural styles. In addition, the guidelines are a set of ideas intended to define a direction to positively influence those who design projects in the village of Tuxedo Park. And we can go through each of the materials, and I know that there's some opposition to some of them, and I welcome our neighbors to bring out their concerns. But just because new design is being proposed, it's not antithetical to the park or to our historic designation. So with that said, I know we've been looking at the,
And if I can just.
Oh, please, go ahead.
interject very briefly, and not to be a broken record to you, but it is very commendable that this new neighbor of ours is projecting a carbon neutral in use, not in the building of it, but in the actual year-to-year use of the house, and it's running. That's a really exciting thing. It's something that I think all of us would like to see more of everywhere, and to see it in our community is, for me as a member of this board, very exciting. And I think if that doesn't call for a certain flexibility in terms of materials, I don't know what does.
Mhm.
I would point out that you don't see any stacks. You don't see any propane tanks in the backyard. You don't see any compressors outside of the building, because all of those mechanicals are inside the mechanical room. And so it's nice, clean look. The landscaping can go right up to the building. There's not going to be any obstructions there, like usual house this big would have 3 or 4 compressors outside. And none of that, because everything is in the ground, and those pipes that are bringing the cold water from the ground, the 55-degree water, which is always 55 degrees all year round, gets brought into the house. In summertime, that cool water will air condition the building. And then in the wintertime, that heat that's in that 55-degree water will be extracted and then used to heat the building. And then the cold water gets pumped back into the ground, and you don't see any of that from the outside of the building. Of course, in the inside, there is quite a jungle of plumbing to make that happen. And also there's going to be a radiant floor that, if it looks like a jungle, that looks like 2 octopi with a number of branches that come off of that, all the different controls to be able to control all the zones that are in that slab.
Understand.
So,
And we've been
That's
with you a
separate.
few times, and you've explained a number of these things to us. I just want to make sure we cover what's required by the planning board. We have discussed the septic field, and we will be brought back, have a landscaping plan brought back at the time, but there is a marker for trees and cover. Lighting fixtures have also been brought up, and we have discussed these in the past. And I don't know if you all want to discuss these, but you're using 16 outdoor lighting fixtures attached to the fixture, attached to the house.
back to the house.
Yes. You say they're energy efficient, modern outdoor LED wall light casts light onto the house. It can go up or down.
Right. Not
we-
out.
But not out. Well, this says up or down. Well, we prefer down, but again, it won't be seen for the most part, I don't believe anyway, from.
And certainly not from the neighbors.
From the
point of
neighbors,
view.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're 17 inches high. And we went through this once before, but I'm raising them again. We've already discussed this with this 5-watt incandescent bulbs. They're not very bright, 62.4 lumen light output per fixture. And they're very simple, modern fixtures. They are, I think, aluminum.
I'm not certain what the metal is. to tell you the truth.
Cast aluminum construction and a silver finish,
Yeah.
it says on the sheet. With that, does anyone have any other discussions they want to have before we allow those present who would like to speak to have an opportunity?
Good.
Okay, John, who would like to, well, let me first say that we did receive some letters that will be put into the record from Inga Ryan, Gruderich, Barry Pace, Lily Newhouser, Sally Sani. I think a second one from Barry Rice, from Barry Rice. And I believe he's here with us today. He may wish to speak. Is there anyone else I'm missing, John, that will be included in the record that wasn't, we've already included some from the last.
Wrightsville did submit some comments,
Okay, and
one of the neighbors.
right, I have those as well. Okay, so those will be included. With that said,
Cheryl, I believe there's also a letter from an attorney, Bernadette Condon of September 12, 2022.
okay, I'm not sure if we entered that at a prior meeting, but that should be in there.
That was directed both to the planning board and to the bar.
Right, thank you. Okay, with that said, John,
And also, just for the record,
Yes.
The planning board indicated that this pursuant to secret is a type 2 action. That's also is in fact a type 2 action, so that we're completed with the environmental review of the project.
thank you, counsel.
That's all. I don't know who raised their hand first. If people want to call on.
Ms. Tachi? You're on mute. There you are. Hello.
Hello?
If people could limit their discussions to approximately 3 minutes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And hello to everybody tonight. Hello, Mr. Perna. I'm just a little bit confused about the driveway. How does that differ from the discussion we had at the planning board meeting last week, or does it differ?
Well, it's still well within the buildable envelope. I think it moved over, 25 feet in what's being proposed? Is that right, John?
There's a few different measurements there, but on an average, it moved over about 20 feet.
20 feet which direction? Towards my property and the neighbors, or away towards the cul-de-sac?
If you're approaching Mr. Perna's driveway from the bottom of the cul-de-sac, he's moving it to the left.
Well, what does that mean to the left? Is that closer to my property, or is it further north?
I think it's the same. It's there it was originally, and it's shifted just a little bit to the left to avoid all these trees. So it's going away the same direction. If you've seen at the beginning of it where it's staked out, when we did the site visit, there was a clear path that existed already, which is a natural flow. So it's just to the left, and we were all very, very happy with the actual new path. It made so much more sense. It was much more sympathetic to the topography, and also because it hugged the slope a little bit more, it'd be a little bit more invisible from your house, for example.
It would, okay, you said it would be more visible from my house?
Invisible, yes. It would
Okay,
be
I
more.
have a little bit of a hard time hearing. Okay, thank you. Well, as you know, the neighbors, have expressed that we wish that the entry was on Lookout Mountain Road. We feel it would be much less site disturbance, certainly would save Mr. Perna a lot of money. and really wouldn't, I think, alter the design of his home too much. And
But
sense
this
of,
is really a planning board issue, Ms.
I know,
Tachi.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying
okay, okay.
about the driveway tonight. So I'll be honest with you, I'm just a little confused as to why the driveway came up at all. The second point that I'd like to mention, I'm a little bit confused, and maybe you can clarify, what the bar procedure is now. In the past, you would be required to bring actual material samples, okay, prior to an approval. So I'm a little bit confused. Is that the same procedure now, or are you going to allow an approval to go ahead and construction to begin, and then have Mr. Perna stop and come back in and submit actual samples and detailed drawings? Because the drawings right now also aren't very detailed, and there's no, detailed landscaping plan or lighting plan. So if you could just clarify the procedure, I'd appreciate that.
I think the detail's pretty clear at this point, but there are we often, with regard to stages of new construction, allow the evolution of the construction to continue. And then as it becomes ripe and as it's ready, we look at the samples, the homeowner is willing to stop construction, have us take a look, make sure it's in keeping with our approval, and continue. We don't feel that just seeing a bag of gravel at this point, or would be all that helpful, or seeing a small slab of paint. Yes, please.
Excuse me for a minute.
Yes.
When my home was built in 1985, nothing was approved until all the materials were presented to the BAR. They had to show the siding. They had to show samples of the windows. They had to show samples of the roof, samples of the bricks, the whole 9 yards. And I don't know why this is being relaxed. This town is, I think, let me finish, please. I'm the neighbor. You're on the board. You're not living next to this house. This house is a total reversal of how this town was built. It's
Can we let
totally
Mr. Otochi finish first,
360
Mr.
degrees around.
Reisfeld, before
Yeah.
we allow you to start? I understand you're very concerned and you're displeased, but Ms. Tochi has the floor.
Sorry.
And then Sheila, it's Tachi, but don't worry, my whole life everybody's mispronounced
Okay.
my name and my
Sorry
last.
about that.
But that's quite all right. But anyway, I'm just concerned because I think that, it's very misleading to just look at a small paint swatch, and I think that, you really have to, in my opinion, see an actual sample. I mean, actually on the lot next to Mr. Perna's lot, there is a large 8-foot long, or 10-foot long stone wall sample that Mr. and Mrs. Standowski had to submit, prior to approval. And, this is, a radical departure, as far as design goes for the neighborhood. It will irrevocably, I think, alter the character of the neighborhood. And I just really think that I think it's just very hard, to approve, something like this without seeing the actual samples. I also think that it runs into the territory of a dangerous precedent. I'm sorry, but I've been in the design and construction industry for 4 years, and I'm not saying that Mr. Perna would do something like this, but there is this overriding mentality of developers when they're anxious to get their construction done. They have this sort of ethos that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. And
You're finished. Yeah.
no, please take that the right way. I just really think that, this is, such a new radical construction in the park and in the neighborhood, that I really think that you should see the actual materials, color, the lighting fixtures, a paint sample, how it's going to look, because it sounds really interesting, the paint, process that he's using, quasi-Venetian plaster and you could really simulate, in my experience, the look of actual stone if understanding the procedure to be what he is describing. And I really think it's important to see all these actual samples before approval's given.
We hear your
Okay.
position
Thank you.
we're taking into, and we're listening to you, but I would argue this is not a radical departure. It's been an evolution over time in what works best in terms of the building of new construction. It's worked in the homes that we have been approving. We're not setting a new precedent here. This is really a process. And if anything, it gives us a better, more realistic sample of what is going to be used than trying to do something up front before they're shoveled to ground. What were
Well,
you?
with all due respect, I'd like to know where a house that is similar to this has been built in the park. All the modern construction, to my knowledge, has been, totally, shielded, and from sight, the colors blend in. It's not a light gray. It's not an off-white. The colors have blended in, with the topography beautifully. So in some cases, you don't even know the house is there when you're looking at it.
Well,
And
that's a different question. That's a different point you're making now, that you're saying that it's not totally shielded. And I would argue there, and invite others to talk, that there's no requirement in the zoning code that you be 100% shielded from your neighbor.
no, it's not a requirement, but it could be a desire. And make no mistake, the decisions you make, are incredibly weighty decisions that irrevocably will alter, the character of the neighborhood, the construction in this community. And that every other modern house in the park, has, comported, to, if not the actual character of the architectural design of the neighborhood, at least they are fully screened and, the colors, totally blend in with the environment.
I hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
Well, this obviously each case is very different. And when people come to the bar with projects, and often, we like this, there's certain parts they want. And sometimes it gets a little bit of a mixture of styles. And so we really have to go into the details and to get examples and specifics to make sure they're all work together. With this project, as with some of the others we've dealt with, we have a very high level of confidence with what it is. It is legendary, it is new, it is groundbreaking, it is very exciting what is happening with this building, not just aesthetically, but functionally. And it is part of a wonderful chapter in the heritage of Tuxedo Park, of what it's bringing. And so we're very, so as I say, it's sort of nice, not new rules, but it's, how can I say that it's exceptional, and so we're trying to encourage this. We're trying to be open-minded about it, to encourage in the future that we can open this new chapter in Tuxedo Park. So when we write the book of the bicentennial of Tuxedo Park in 2085, we can add a second book to the architecture of Tuxedo Park, and we can bring something to the table instead of a pastiche of something that as the original design has been diminished, and made. So if we followed the wishes of some of the the letters that have come in, it's focused on. It's not charming. Well, that's not enough. Charming. If we were just going to do charming, then we wouldn't be adding anything. So sometimes we need to be bold, and in this case, especially, the fact is, this zero carbon footprint, the solar panel heating, the geothermal heating is so timely and so important, and so we're so grateful that someone has come to Tuxedo Park to bring this to the table, instead of, as you've said yourself many times, serious architects won't come to the park because they know they're going to be turned away. So, that's a little bit of the sensibility.
I'd like to add to that, Christopher. First of all, there's several homes that I can think of that are have brought this new technology to Tuxedo Park. We have several homes that have geothermal. We have several homes that are even, off the grid now and are sustainable. This certainly isn't the first, okay? But we are just asking, that, your approval process not be occluded, okay, or jaded, by this. We have some serious concerns in the neighborhood about the design of this house, the colors being used, and the actual materials. I mean, there, stucco. I mean, like, is there going to be a drive-it coat over the stucco to seal it? I mean, there's no detailing as to the windowsills or the joints on the house. I mean, drive-it. I don't know if you know this, material. It's a EIFS material. It's toxic. It's toxic to the people who live in the house. If the house catches on fire, it's toxic to the neighborhood.
Well, now you're asking questions, and
I mean, Ken,
assumptions. But we've heard your point and we thank you for it.
okay,
I would call him Mr. Wrightsville.
okay. Well,
So,
I don't think I think that frankly, okay, I understand and I respect the way a meeting is run, but I really think that, what I have said also deserves contemplation and an answer from the board before this approval is made. And I would just like to make one final statement in that I just really feel you've got to see these actual, as you say, groundbreaking, innovative materials, because they might not be exactly what they look like in the book. And you should have a detailed landscaping plan at this stage and a lighting plan. And Christopher, I am concerned, although I trust you implicitly, about the types of trees that you have recommended, and that they're not going to take 20 years to grow. We'd like mature plantings put in, if at all possible, to screen the house and to protect our privacy. With that, I thank you very much for hearing me tonight, and I appreciate you letting me be heard.
And thank you for your input.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
Before we go further in this public hearing, the purpose of a public hearing is for the public to bring items to the attention of the board. It is not a question and answer session. It's not an inquisition session. So if we could keep our statements focused on the criteria that this board is dealing with and bring items to our attention, that would be appreciated, and also would streamline this public hearing because we have a lot of people here. We have also other applicants waiting.
So that being said, I'll keep it short. In living in that area for 36 years, and by the way, my house is an original design house as well by a very well-known architect, Mr. Roth, and he's done 3 or 4 in the park. But that being said, when my house was built, I had to hook into sewer, which had just been brought into the area, and I had to put in an injector pump and pump up 485 feet up the road to Lookout Road. I don't know why this project, with all the environmental and green part of it, doesn't accomplish staying and hooking into city sewer, which is easily available to the home. And the downhill flow down to where the sewer is the right way to do it. I'm concerned about the leach field on Paula's property and near mine, which when the wind is right, blows right towards my backyard. That's one thing. I'm concerned about the shading of the house. I've planted, my family is are horticultural designers in the business for 40 years in New Jersey. We tried everything. Holly won't take because the deer will eat it. The only thing that you'll be able to shield that house with, white pine doesn't work because of the insects in the area, in the forest. And the only thing that really takes is pine trees. And I tried to shield my house when we first built it between Paula's house and mine, just to give some privacy. Blue spruce is the type of tree that will work. The deer and the animals on the forest are there. The insects are there, and that's an issue. The leach field, in my opinion, is going to attract insects and vermin, and I'd rather see it not be there. That being said, we can talk about the innovations. I think the innovations are very nice. I get the heat pump thing, the geothermal. I don't know how well that works when there's a drought and you can't get to the water table, especially where the house is going to be situated. I don't know what that's going to involve in that area with the bedrock, in getting it through the bedrock, and the possible damage to our homes because of either digging and going through rock with jackhammers, and that's a concern. I certainly don't want to see the house. I don't like what it looks like. That's not why I moved to Tuxedo Park. I moved to Tuxedo Park because of its historic value, what the houses look like. When my house was built, I had to have my chimney match an older chimney look so that the house would blend into the theme of Tuxedo Park. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak?
Yeah, if I may, please. My name is Bernadette Condon. I'm the attorney who represents Palatine, Sheldon, Brendan, and Jessica Nave, who are the immediate neighbors to this property. I note that you indicated you had received some letters, and I have the list of letters, to my knowledge, that have been submitted. It did not sound like you had received my September 12th letter, which was submitted to the boards, both the planning board and the Board of Architecture Review back on September 12th.
Yes, we have it. I'm
Okay.
sorry if we weren't clear, but we have it.
Okay. I
And
just
it
wanna-
will be put into the record.
Thank you. That is indeed part of the record. Okay, thank you. I won't reiterate what Ms. Tachi and Mr. Reitzfeld have said, but I will elaborate a little bit on it. Obviously, the design of this house is a big concern to the neighbors. That's been made clear. The siting of the house was an issue before the planning board, and although based upon plans, it's still what the visibility of this house will be from the neighboring properties. It can, I think, be concluded that the house is being built on a higher elevation of the property, so that there certainly will be some visibility, especially in the winter months and the autumn when the foliage is falling. So to that extent, it is critical that the bar really consider the impact that this house will have on the neighboring property. In terms of site, the enjoyment of their own property. And I understand, the guidelines are there as guidelines, but, they're there for a reason. As Mr. Reitzfeld said, this is a historic community. And that's the reason that these neighbors moved here and purchased here. This house does not blend with the fabric of the community, but, and I can appreciate, and as I'm sure the neighbors can too, progression. But such a stark contrast to the fabric of the community is concerning to the neighbors. With respect to what's before the bar tonight, I'll start with the driveway because that's where Mr. Perna started. Putting aside, and I know that's been decided, it's not clear how many are going to be removed. All we know, Mr.
You're
Perna-
breaking up, and I want to hear what you have to say, so
hear me now?
I can't hear you.
Is this better?
Yes, so
Okay.
far.
Okay, I was talking about the driveway. I'm not clear based on the discussion this evening, how many trees will be taken down. Mr. Perna indicated there will be some, I'm not sure how many, and I think we need to know that, and we need to know which trees they are. I mean, he's indicated that many of them are decaying or dead, but we don't know if there are some viable trees that will be taken down. And if that could be avoided, certainly be preferable. With respect to the landscaping along the septic field, that abuts directly to Ms. Tachi's property. And we talked about having conifers brought in, but as Ms. Tachi indicated, seedlings are not going to do it. I mean, she can see this property from, hers, and the septic field abuts hers. So I think there needs to be mature, full-grown trees placed for screening. Because I don't think seedlings are going to fit where we need for that privacy and that screening to be in effect. And then with respect to the actual materials that are going to be used on the building, I'll echo what Ms. Tachi said. I don't know how you can make an approval without seeing those. You don't have a landscape plan and we don't have the actual materials. I mean, I understand that we can stop construction and then come back to the Board of Architectural Review for approval of those materials as the construction progresses, but that doesn't seem to make much sense. I mean, what if the structure is in place and now we're just dealing with the facade and the cladding and it's not permitted? I mean, now we're back to square one. It just doesn't seem to make much sense logistically to proceed in that fashion. So I would suggest, and I would urge actually, the board to require a full landscape plan as well as actual samples of the materials to be seen in the natural conditions, in the natural light where they are going to be implemented before it gives approval for this application.
Yeah, I could, George, should I answer?
Yes,
Or-
please.
You may.
So I think with the new, the driveway was redone, the plan was redone this morning. That's unfortunately why you probably don't have it in front of you. We have it here. And so instead of, I think there's 1, 2, 3 trees now.
No, how many's
They're
taken?
going to be removed.
Oh, 3 that will be.
3 trees now are going to be removed versus 8.
Right.
So it's versus 11. I think it was versus.
Oh, okay,
Well,
including-
so there's, yeah, so 3, to answer your question, 3 trees are going to move.
And not only a question of number, but the ones that we urged Mr. Perna to preserve, and he kindly has in this new revised plan, are exceptionally large caliber, mature, healthy, good oaks.
And the plan is here and is going to be signed and if approved. The as far as the landscape plan is concerned, the beauty of this is that it's respecting this landscape as much as possible, and so it's not like a garden and that sort of landscaping. The whole purpose, as we understand it, is to be at one with Mother Nature, inside Mother Nature. So it's more putting back any damage that is done, is repairing any damage, as opposed to a whole huge landscaping and changing of the landscaping. The plan that we understand is to keep the status quo, but
And to remove invasives. as I understand.
to remove
To
invasives
remove-
and add to it for screening. And obviously that screening aspect can be done on the neighbor's side as well. We encourage you to plant on your own properties as well, which, we have to wait with this because of the construction, but feel free to start landscaping on your side as well if the site of that house is going to be upsetting to you.
And one last thing, Ms. Condon, I just wanted to stress, when I,
You need a detailed landscape plan done by a landscape architect.
I'm sorry, Paula, I was just,
This-
I'm sorry, I was just speaking. Paula?
I'm sorry, who?
Just interrupted me.
Oh,
This is
who-
Rob. This is Rob
Oh,
McQuilkin.
You were
I was in the
speaking.
middle. Thank you. Ms. Condon, one thing I also want to stress, now that Christopher is finished, is that no one is suggesting that seedlings are going to be screening from the neighbors. What I mentioned is there are many, many hundreds of them, good oaks that can't, some of which can be edited away and some of which can be kept. Those in the long term, 20, 30, 50, 100 years are going to be very healthy trees. That is not to preclude or replace large white pines and American beeches that Mr. Perna, in discussion with Christopher Gao, who's the head of the Tree Advisory Board, will be planting for screening, just to be clear.
Okay, but you need a landscaping plan that details that shows it, so that.
I don't believe we do. I think it's perfectly clear what the intention is, and I think it's perfectly,
Road has been paved.
again, commendable, along with the rest of the plan.
Well, I'm sorry. I guess I
But
respect.
we disagree.
We agree to disagree,
We-
respectfully disagree.
Okay, well, and we've heard your comment.
But there's also an issue with survey. I am now actually having an actual survey done. I misunderstood the planning board meeting. I had my property staked. They said that if there was any sort of question about boundaries and meets and bounds.
I'll interrupt you there because that's not relevant at this time.
but that'll-
And if you end up having a legal
Okay for
disagreement
that.
about the limits of the survey, You will take them up with Mr. Perna. But we have a legal survey on which the planning board made its decision, and we are relying on that.
Yes, but I'm just saying, well, there might be coming, I hope not. I hope that there's no issue. I truly don't. I mean, I'm a collaborative person. I'm not a combative
Okay.
person by nature. So I hope that there's.
Thank
no-
you very much.
But, I will be presenting the survey and hopefully there won't be an issue. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak that has not been called on this application?
Barry Rice has his hand up.
It's Jamie Mikado.
Very right.
Barry Rice. I have your 2 letters, which will be read into the record unless you want to read.
Mr. Rice, you're on mute.
You're still on mute.
There it is.
There you
My
go.
apologies, I have a lot of background noise, so tell me if you can't hear me, please.
We can hear you.
You can hear me? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So my main concerns are twofold, and I think I'm not repeating what's already been said. Number one is there's never been a clear, accurate representation of what this house will look like with view from the ground on the neighboring properties. The renderings that were given were not detailed renderings in context. So that's a statement. There are many ways to do this, to achieve this, but the neighbors have not been given the opportunity to make an evaluation for themselves of the visibility of the house. So I'll leave that alone now. Number two, I just want to reinforce the fact that in the design guidelines, having actual material samples for the BAR committee to review prior to giving approval has been the precedent as far as I've been involved in the BAR, and for good reason. Now, you might have changed that, and that's fine, but I just want to put it on the record that this is an unusual process to go through. And the last thing I want to say, and this is very brief, is Mr. Perna is using a material that, I've been doing this for most of my life, and I won't say how many decades that is. I've never come across a stucco lustro or a Venetian plaster that's used on the outside, and I'm very interested to find out what this material is. But my question is, what is the substrate for this material? What does it put upon? Is it isocyanate insulation, so you use each, or is it a traditional stucco base and then the Venetian plaster put on top? That's just some technical issue which I'd like to understand because I've never seen Venetian plaster used outside. And also with Venetian plaster and with stucco, there are always joint lines to allow for expansion on facades. And these are usually a fundamental part of the design of the building to show these expressed and they're not shown on the floor. That's all I need to say now.
Sorry, could you repeat the last point?
About the
Yes.
joint lines.
Stucco lustre, stucco or drive-it always has a grid of control joints to accommodate differential movement, expansion of the underlying structure differentiated from the stucco surface. So to stop cracking and control cracking, there are a series of joints that are usually expressed about 10 feet on center vertically and horizontally. I don't see any of this expression on the building. And my question to Mr. Perna's architects and designers is, will these be shown at some point for the BAR to review and to comment upon? Because there'll be a very dominant part of the expression of this architecture when you start to see these joints.
I do have the architectural renderings available to pull up if you'd like.
And also maybe Mr. Mikado can speak to it while you do that.
It's up to you.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I only have one point, only because Christopher mentioned a couple of things about the landscape, and I'm not going to repeat. Pretty much because I agree with 100% of what he said. The one other thing I wanted to ask or just point out is the process of material approvals. I understand in the past you needed physical approvals, but you have to understand from back then and today, we have technological advances that permit the actual realistic identification of what the materials are being used by using computer software. And so a lot of the necessity of having actual materials submitted across the board in all the projects that I worked on has not been necessary because they've been reflected accurately in pictures, which is obviously not possible, 20 years ago. The materials, on the other hand, can be available, but as many people would know or choose not to know, is that a lot of manufacturers do not give you samples of the process because it's either it's hard to get, expensive to get, and the only way you get the materials to look at and touch and feel it is if you sign them on board, meaning that you give them a retainer. So at this time, Jack Perna will not give any money to any company that will not accept, they need a contract in order to give them something in return. And so at this point, that's not possible. So it's kind of a catch-21. So that's one point.
Can I comment on that? Can I comment on that?
That's all I have to say at this point. I may have another comment in addition, but for now, I'm good.
This isn't meant to be a debate. I think
Correct.
that
It's
we
not.
have assessed
If
the.
anyone needs to bring something to this board's attention, please do so, but otherwise, let's move on.
Mr. Rice wanted to comment.
Yeah, comment.
You make a final comment, but we'd like to move on.
I understand that you'd like to move on, and I respect that.
We believe your comments have
I am
been.
constantly in front of boards like yours in Manhattan, community boards, etc. Material boards are always required when landmarks is involved. I know this isn't a landmark situation, but the fact that things can be done digitally has never foregone the need for having material samples approved at this level of presentation. That's just, for the record, real life experience. It's expected by developers and house builders in most areas to provide these samples. Thank you. Particularly if they're new materials that haven't been seen before.
Thank you very much. With that, is there anyone else that's speaking on this application, John?
Mr. and Mrs. Ramos, it's not normally like this.
No, I do not see anyone else wishing to speak at this time.
We should probably then close the public portion of the
Yes,
meeting.
yes, I'd like to close the public hearing on this matter.
All in favor?
All in favor? With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution, which I believe council has prepared. And Counselor, we want to make sure that we include that there will be samples of the gravel, the facade treatment, and its light gray color,
as well.
and the cedar, the septic field landscaping plan, and that the materials book is included as a part of the resolution.
And also as part of the approval process, we have I would say an amended driveway plan. We can date it as of today, October 20, 2022, and consisting of one sheet, and the purpose of which is to amend the previously submitted site plan drawings of the driveway. Would that be correct to say?
And if Mr. Perna can just date and sign those plans, so we have them.
And Mr. Perna can date and sign those plans so that it can be referred to in the future.
And do we need to stipulate the replacement of trees at this point, or is that just an understood?
I think
It's already on
That's
the,
okay. That's
it's in the drawing. With that being said,
I don't have the,
oh, okay, so how do we want to handle that?
so you could make a motion. to
Yeah, I'll make a
accept,
motion to
based
a-
upon all the comments that were just made with respect to the conditions and the extra submissions.
Right,
And it's also based upon the submissions that are now before and in John Ledwood's office. Do we have the date of the last revised on those plans?
we have what's in the planning board. For the planning board,
Yes, planning board,
As referred to in the planning board resolution of October 13, I believe.
yes,
yes.
Date of approval, October 12.
correct. Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
The proposal passes unanimously. Thank you for your consideration on this one. We can now move forward to the Ramos application.
We can't hear. You're muted down there. We can't hear anything. Hello? We cannot hear the meeting.
Yeah, I lost sound too, Jake.
Thank you. It's back, but we heard nothing since the start of this discussion. It's now muted again.
Yeah, the meeting room is on mute. I'm going to send John Ledwith an email.
There's no chat feature here. Hello? We can't hear. We can't hear anything.
Yeah, they took away chat after they got hacked that one time.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Hear us now, Jacob Matthews?
You can hear
Now-
us, yeah?
We can
Yep.
hear you, thank you, but we haven't heard anything since you started the Ramos application.
We understand and we're rolling back the
We'll
tape.
rewind. We'll
We're going
start
to start
again.
again. We're going to start from scratch. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Take two.
With thanks.
We're still here.
We're just bringing up the screen.
Okay,
Mr. Ramos,
Pretend we didn't
can you
any
hear
of
us,
that.
Mr. Matthews? Yes, he's on mute, but I think he can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Yes.
Very well. So just for the exterior of the building, as you well know what exists there now, so we're gonna install a 1x6 cedar material. And it will be allowed to weather to its natural finish, no coloring at all. The windows will be all wood with a black exterior. And the roof that was replaced in 2007 will be replaced with the same material, just a shade difference in color. It's a gray finish now. It's going to be somewhere closer to the brown family. And doors, the garage doors will be removed that have probably been there since 1910. And new windows will be installed to replace those. And I think that's basically it on the whole exterior.
Can I ask a couple of questions? So you said 1x6. This is reading as clapboard. Is it clapboard material? In other words, a long?
Yes, like
and not-
clapboard.
Okay. And have you ever considered cedar shake? Is it now cedar shake or what is it now?
No,
Oh,
no,
what is it now?
It's a shingle asbestos material,
Oh, but it is shingles.
but it's a shingle.
And you don't like the shingle detail. You prefer
Well,
clapboard.
it's actually in many places, it's worn out.
Oh,
It's dangerous.
No, I totally understand the need to replace it. I was just wondering whether you would ever consider replacing it in kind. I think for some reason I was led to understand that you were going to replace it in cedar shake shingles on the elevation.
Yeah,
as
no, it's
opposed to-
gonna be a 1x6. Could you see how wide that front is?
Mhm.
I mean, it's just preference. I have the cedar shingled on my house, a
Mm.
22 lookout,
Mhm.
which is nice, but this is just a preference.
Okay. So you're replacing all the windows.
All windows,
And so when you replace these two rather strange quasi bay windows, you will replace them with flat windows.
there'll be flat windows,
Okay, thank
3
you.
of them.
Great. And all of the mullions and muntins on the window will be black, as well as the shutters will be black as well, right? Okay, great. So then my only last question, all of it sounds great. My own sense is that with natural weathered surfaces, unless you're in New Hampshire and you have what is a genuinely colonial house, it looks very odd to have clapboard, untreated and unstained. I think, especially with what is clearly not an old colonial house, that it would probably be much more appealing in just a natural cedar shake, which goes with the period of 1885 to 1940 much more comfortably. But setting that aside, given the color scheme that you have, which will be, it will be naturally aged or stained, the clapboards?
It'll be naturally.
Okay, good. And so it will be brownish gray.
It'll be more on the brown.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So if you're doing new asphalt shingles that are in the brown family, it occurs to me, although I realize looking at this elevation, you don't see much of the roof. So this may make my next comment academic, but it might be nice, or it might have been nice to pick up some of the black in it. There's architectural shingles, which is one grade above. It's a little bit more expensive.
So we're actually in the middle of those two.
Oh, you are?
We're in that black.
Well, let me
range.
cast my
So
small opinion here in favor of something that would pick up. I think that it would be a much more engaging design if the roof were a little bit in dialogue. What I have found is that when you have a solid sort of field of asphalt shake, because it's so regular, it can be overwhelming or draw attention to itself or look new.
Right.
So
I
it's
appreciate
just one
that.
small thought. That's it for me.
Mhm.
I have a question about the windows. There's the divided light windows, but then there's sort of like a little, is it a letter or is it, I'm not sure what it is, whether it's a label.
Circular something in the upper levels.
We're talking up here.
No, sorry,
No,
the
it's
new
So
rendering.
the uppers
Oh.
will be the French panels, and the lower one would be completely unobscure.
Oh, that's not what this shows.
Does it show the,
Hold on, I'll off the other.
let me see it.
So what?
It's a marker. This is what I
Ah.
was.
Oh, yes, I see. No, so the bottoms, I'm sorry, the bottoms would be just a panel and the uppers. So yeah, that's the design is wrong.
So, okay, so, and that little and the uppers, that sort of circle, what is that? Is that
I
just
have
a
no
code?
idea what that,
I think
yeah.
those are just specifications.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
I had the same question and I
Okay.
realized there's an
Okay.
A or a.
Yeah, there is an A
Yeah.
on those in the front center.
Oh, yeah.
You can see a little bit of.
Okay, okay.
So
Otherwise it'd be a
the
little
windows will
lower.
be, as this one is here, the lowers will be, and then the uppers will have the little panes in it.
Oh, so they're not gonna do that.
That's just for
Divided
the
light.
benefit of our understanding. That has nothing to do with the design, right? Yeah.
But they're not fully divided light. They're gonna be divided light on top and not on the bottom.
Oh, I see.
Is that what you're
Uppers will
saying?
Be divided to lowers.
Or not?
Frankly, I think that's nice.
Yeah,
and
I'm
I
just,
think
I'm
that's
just
an
saying.
It's actually, I copied it from one of the other neighbors. There's several other homes are the same way.
Well, I think otherwise it looks slavishly like you're slavishly trying to create a colonial effect. I think this is nicer for the period of this village,
Mm.
doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And this is the challenge when you're renovating a house and adding new things. It's so much more difficult than maybe starting from scratch when it's all homogeneous. So these little details, as I'm sure clearly you're aware, are the ones we need to home in on to make it.
Sure.
Yeah, to make and so to see what worked with the neighbor's houses and looks great is a great plan. I just wanted to mention with this process that we're going through, we're giving you some advice and input and there'll be the next stage when you come back with these revisions and
And
then
maybe a sample.
and
Yeah.
the samples of, with the exact colors so that we make sure that, the color of the windows, the color of the shake, the color of the roof all works well together.
Unlike a completely new house, which happens, this is your project. So, yeah.
And then once we're all happy with that, then as you saw, we vote and then agree on it. And then if it's a yes, then you can go ahead with the work. Until you get that vote from us, you can't go ahead with the work. I just want to make that clear so there's no misunderstanding.
Mr. Ramos, if I can ask one last question, the doors also would be black as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Does anyone else have any comments before we allow Mr. Matthews to provide his
Yeah,
comment?
I just wanted to
Okay.
say the reasoning behind all the different window styles, or is the plan that they all are going to be the same style?
They're all gonna be the same style.
Okay, so we'll need to see that. plan.
Okay.
And then also exterior lighting, if their light fixture is going to be used for the entrance doors or the driveway.
Good point.
And the driveway as is, I mean, it's fantastic you're removing the garage doors. The driveway as is seems pretty severe.
Has to be recoded.
And now what will you do? Will you do that, what is it?
Black.
Chip, not chip and dip. What is it called? It's where you put the
Oil and chip?
oil and chip. So this, would you consider doing that to make it less suburban?
Industrial.
Yeah, I have no objection to that.
Because it is canted down, I think it would be hard for loose gravel, but the chip and dip, which we'll just call it, we'll agree to call it chip and dip, could look very nice. It will look like a,
Well,
gravel.
John can help
truck.
you, give you examples to take a
And that
look.
would be a lot cheaper than, say, putting Belgian block or something in front, which some of the houses on that road
Right.
have done.
Right.
But that might be a nice way of making it less brutal looking as it is right now. One other question is, so if I understand correctly, the house as it is 2 units, it's grandfathered in, and that'll be how it will remain. So there are 2 different units.
Absolutely.
And can you just speak to how they're divided, as we're looking at this front elevation? Is it the left and right scenario or?
No, so the upper level is 1 unit all the way from the left corner to the right corner.
Okay.
And then the other unit is the bottom. If you look at the window on the right side, that's the other unit that goes all the way to the back, from the front of this garage door to the back.
Oh, okay, right.
So the unit on the left just encompasses everything on the left and up from corner to corner.
Got it. And one is much bigger than the other.
One is a lot bigger than the other.
And you
yes.
will you guys live in the bigger one and then have a tenant or?
No, we live here in the park at 22.
Oh, so this
Lookout.
is an income,
This was a.
income producing.
This is an income
So there will
producing.
be 2, okay, got it. But that's how it's been since clearly 1950 or whatever, yeah.
And the door on the left, that's the entrance to
the upper unit.
upper unit.
And then that garage door, if you see, that's gonna have a door right in the center between 2 windows.
Is the garage currently used as a garage for cars? No. So cars are currently parking on the street.
So no, so in the front, if you look at, this is the way they had it originally. The cars would always park in the front of the property.
Mhm.
That's the way the owners, these were the original cars.
And is this the way it will be now?
And this is the way, yes.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
So there's space for 4 cars.
Right. Which, to be fair, many of the buildings on that street continue to do. Right. But I do think that doing the chip and dip
More
will be
traffic.
one way, especially because it is a little bit harsh and that it's quite intense with all the cars. Just of prettifying it a little bit, softening the effect.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Mr. Matthews, would you like to comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening to everyone, and thank you for opening the floor to me, and congratulations to the Ramos family on a great property. It'll be beautiful to see it resurrected. It needs obviously some TLC. I've known the building. I grew up in Tuxedo Park, and I've known the building since I was about 5 years old. I used to visit the residents who just sold it to the Ramos to make pancakes in the morning. So I would walk up the street and visit the second level and make pancakes. Uninvited, I would knock on the door and walk in. So I know the property very well. And my family wishes them, the Ramos, great success with the project. I think it's going to be great to see. So just a couple of things that I'd like to reiterate or reconfirm, and I don't know if it's questions or statements. If I go off the rails and ask questions and I'm not allowed to, just let me know. And I think just a couple of points. I think it's called chip seal, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that's the term you were looking for. And I also had an interesting thought as I think it was member McQuilkin was mentioning about the difference between shingle and clapboard. And this is not my preference or opinion on any of this, but I think as I look at my mom's house, just by way of background, my name is Jacob Matthews, and my mom lives across the street and has been there since the early 1980s and previously down the street since the late 1960s. All on Clubhouse Road. So we know the street very well and the character of this closely clustered neighborhood, which is very unique to Tuxedo Park. But in short, I had a thought about what Mr. McQuilkin was mentioning. And again, it's not any preference that we're expressing, but a thought for both the board and the owners is, if you look at my mom's house, it's actually clapboard below what I would call below the belt line. And then where you see the house has this swoop or swale that comes out in the middle, it's shingle up top. And that breaks up that monolithic block structure of the building. So just food for thought. And that only occurred to me just now. It wasn't part of my prepared comments, but potentially having clapboard at the bottom and shingle up top. Again, I'm not proposing anything that's our view. It's just a food for thought for the people involved here. And you may see other homes in Tuxedo Park around that are reflective of that. The Davis stable above us may be reflective of that, with clapboard below and then above the belt line shingle. So you may find dozens of examples like that as inspiration. An important matter is obviously the number of units that are in the building. It is our understanding that there's 2 units. Presently, it's a 2-family home, and it's going to remain that way. That is correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. But it does appear that the overall bedroom count on the floor plans is increasing from current 4 bedrooms up to a total of 6 bedrooms between the 2 units. Is that a fair reading of those plans?
Yes.
Okay. So in that respect, is there any, I don't know if this is a matter for the board or what have you, or the applicants, does that impact an increase in bedrooms? I don't know. Does that impact parking at all? I have no idea. It's just a question for any consideration. I'm not sure that it does. And so in a related question is the parking staying the same, or is there anything proposed new? Mr. Ledwith answered that the parking configuration is not changing. Is that correct and understood correctly?
That is correct. Its configuration staying the same.
Gotcha. Okay. And the 1x6 cedar planking apparently is supposed to be untreated and weather naturally. That's going to be a natural material, and the intention is to keep it weathering unnaturally, is what I understand, or weathering naturally, I should say.
Yes.
I'm not making a preference on that, actually, one way or the other. I suppose, though, that if there were going to be painting, maybe the board could just review what the color of the home might be, either painting or staining.
We would, but we were told it was going to remain natural.
And then my final point on behalf of my mom is that we just kindly request that if and when demolition or construction begins, that at the home, that appropriate covers be placed and maintained on any dumpsters, trucks, or storage containers during construction, so that any construction debris does not blow around the neighborhood or find its way onto other neighboring properties, which are closely clustered nearby. And Mr. Ledwith kindly responded that that's an understood point and would be understood by all, I hope.
Absolutely.
Beyond
they're
that,
already our neighbors, so I'm sure they're going to.
Right. I have seen projects in the park. It's no comment on anybody's approach to things, but now and again you'll see dumpsters at properties, and they're uncovered, and whether it's the siding coming off the building that goes in the dumpster and sits for weeks and gets blown in a windstorm, or a worker puts styrofoam coffee cups in there and then the birds take it out. You get all matter of stuff, and because we're so closely clustered on Clubhouse Road, it's helpful, I think, to have any materials that are stored construction wise, or demolition materials, either new building materials or demolition materials, properly stored, covered, and contained, so that they don't end up flying around into all parts of the neighborhood. And so I think those are our comments, and thank you for your time. And again, best wishes with the project. Very, very exciting.
And Jake, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your thoughtful comments.
I mean, those really are thoughtful, neighborly comments.
Yes.
And I must say, as a present member of the BAR and a past member of the planning board, I can't tell you how rare that kind of constructive engagement is. So thank you for it.
And
Well, I'm very
passionate. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm very passionate and fond of Tuxedo Park's architecture. And in fact, when you have stables on Clubhouse Road and Stable Road, this is a tremendously unique, almost a heritage street within this designated park. And it's tremendously special. And I'm happy to impart, you know, some of these anecdotal things I know and recognize about the community. And again, welcome to the Ramoses, and I hope it's a tremendous success.
I think Mr. Ramos wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Matthews, that my wife and I just want to assure you that we see your mom come out every day. We always stop to talk to her. So we want to assure that as neighbors, we want to make sure that she's safe and certainly that she's comfortable. So we're very aware and very mindful and conscientious about her living right next to us.
That's very sweet of you and very kind. And I actually, on the architectural side, I do think that's an improvement to flatten out the bay windows. And I recall standing in them as a kid. It's a beautiful view out there. But I think from an architectural perspective, that's going to be an improvement. The only final question I have is, do the heights sort of stay the same with the driveway? We're looking at an elevation on this photo. Do those doors and heights and entryways stay a little higher on the right, and on the left they're staying a little bit lower? Does that elevation shift or change at all?
I think the way the architect, I think they lined them up pretty close. I think the left garage door will line up with the one on the right, and the windows will all be about the same. So yeah, we'll get that. The lines will be, they'll be lining all the way across evenly.
I'm not expressing a preference on that. I just was asking if that driveway is going to be changed and there's going to be different grading going on there. I don't know if that impacts anything with, you know, water flow or anything like that. I don't know that at the moment we have any problems with water flow, but if the grading were to change, that's only one other thing that might. But I don't see any proposals for changes to the driveway, so I think it's
not at all
a non-starter.
Just the height to bring the.
Right, yes.
Yeah, should be nice.
Right. Thank you very much.
Oh, just a follow-up comment on the dumpsters.
Yes.
We had a neighbor that had raccoons because the workers were throwing their lunch in there, so the raccoons would go. It stopped because he put a sign up saying "No food in here," which I thought he was addressing that to the raccoons, and they agreed. But no, it was to the workers, and they stopped putting food in, and there was no more raccoon.
Very cute. Thank you so much.
I do have just one final question. The siding that's going to come off of that building, that will be carted away and disposed of, correct? That's going to be detritus that will leave the site, correct?
The siding will not be removed, it will be encapsulated. It will not be removed, it will be encapsulated, it will not disturb it.
Okay, so the existing siding that's on that building will stay on there, and you're going to go over that with your new exterior material?
Because of the asbestos
Yes,
nature.
exactly. There's a construction
want it to
material
fry.
that'll go up 1x4s, and then it'll be the cedar on top of that.
That's a good question. So then in that case, then all of the window framings and everything will come out a little bit. What about the roof line? What will, because that's not, it's not proud by more than.
Good point.
3
So-
inches.
So the roofer's gonna extend the eaves out by 6 inches, and then we're gonna bring out the construction material and the cedar by 1.5 inches. So we'll still have a little overhang.
So while you're doing that, can you also get it, right now it is a very insubstantial, thin effect. Can you bring it not only out, but also thicken it?
We are.
Oh,
It's gonna be a 1x, it's gonna come out 6 inches and it's gonna come down 1x4.
Beautiful.
So.
These
it'll
are
be a
also
nice
good.
overhang.
You've done this before, I guess.
Yes.
Is this your business or?
I was in construction for about.
Okay, because you seem
25
very,
years.
you know your way around.
This isn't his first rodeo.
Clearly.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll see you again with samples and hopefully we can proceed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For
Thank
your
you.
hard work and good luck with this.
Okay.
It's going to be a great improvement to that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good luck.
All righty.
Thank you.
Very much.
Good evening.
Last thing on our, and the same to you. Thank you for your patience. The last thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes from the meeting of
September 1st,
September 1st.
which is my birthday, so I remember clearly.
The birthday girl's birthday date. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I was just reading my word,
Okay.
so I was here.
All in favor?
Good night. Aye.
Okay. The meeting's adjourned at 8:47 PM.
Beautiful.
Turn it on. Turn it on.